हाय एवरीवन, वेलकम टू पिंस्टा प्रोजेक्ट्स ब्लेंडर सीरीज़ पे। तो आज मैं ब्लेंडर को यूट्यूब की मदद से सीखने की कोशिश करूँगा। यूट्यूब से ब्लेंडर को सीखने की कोशिश करूँगा। कोई एक आध अच्छी ब्लेंडर ब्लेंडर ट्यूटोरियल फॉर बिगिनर्स। ओके, तो हाँ, ये वाला बंदा मुझे सही लगा। मैंने एक आध वीडियो इसका देखा। तो ब्लेंडर गुरु है, तो इट्स वेरी बिट उतना डीप नहीं है जितना ये जो क्रॉस माइंड वाला बंदा ने जो एलेबोरेट किए करके जो वीडियो बनाया है। इट्स रियली गुड। तो हम इसको पार्ट पार्ट में सीखेंगे। ऐड ही परेशान करता है। ठीक है, तो हम इसको स्टार्ट से लेते हैं, थोड़ा समझने की कोशिश
When
करते
your
हैं।
website fits like that,
Okay,
works
yes.
like that, and runs as fast as that, it
इसको थोड़ा
feels
मैं
good. With WordPress
मिनिमाइज
hosting
करता
from
हूँ।
Hostinga, you're just one click away from a powerful website building platform. Pick one of our suggested website templates and customize it to look just like you want it to be. Arun uses the WordPress platform for his design portfolio. Trisha
Okay.
is coding a website for one of our commercial.
Going to see in the final animation or the still
यहाँ पे थोड़ा
image.
साउंड कम
This is
करता
your
हूँ।
3D viewport.
Okay.
Before we get into any other details, I
ये
just
वाला
want to
3D
do a
viewport
quick
है।
run through of what you see on the screen right now.
Yes.
Okay. Over the top left, you have standard menus like any other
Menus,
computer
हाँ,
application.
menus
Over the
यहाँ पे
left, you have
टूल शेल्फ है
tools
ये।
for basic
Right.
stuff like move, rotate, and scale. And
Right,
these
ये
tools
वाला
actually change when you are in different modes. If you are into painting mode like texture painting, these will change to the paint
ये वाला
related
सब है।
options, and if you are into sculpt mode, then these will change to the sculpting
स्कल्प
brushes.
मोड में।
On the
राइट, हाँ,
right top
ये
we
वाले सब
have
ब्रशेस
object
आएंगे।
outliner. Now you can
सपोज इसको
organize
डाला
the
ऐसे
scene
हुआ।
with this. Whichever object you create in the 3D viewport will be listed over
कुछ
here. There are options to organize like with the help of collections. Collections are like folders, and you can use these
मूव हो
collections
रहा
to
है।
set up render layers as well. In the bottom right we have the properties panel.
Right.
There are several different properties over here. The first one is the active tool. It gives you
ये वाला
options,
प्रॉपर्टीज
available
वाला है।
options for the active tool you have. Okay. And the second one is the
रेंडर वाला
render
है,
properties to set up the
जो
render
प्रॉपर्टी
related
सेट कर सकते हैं
parameters.
वो कर
Third one is
सकते
the
हैं। ठीक है,
output,
थर्ड
which is
आउटपुट
for
है।
setting up the dimension of the render and
यहाँ पे
like frame size, frame rate, and the
और ये
output
वाला
where you want to save it.
लेयर्स,
Then we have render passes and
पासेस,
scene
लेयर्स,
properties
वही
to set
हाँ,
up the
पासेस यहाँ पे
unit
है।
size, the gravity of the scene,
पासेस, ओके।
and set up the camera. Then we have the world environment to set up the environment texture, which is like you can also use HDRI in the background or simply use colors or shaders.
HD,
Object properties, this gives you all the available information for the given
ये वाला
object.
ऑब्जेक्ट
Right now
प्रॉपर्टीज
this is showing our default cubes properties. Modifiers list, which is very extensive list, and we are going to discuss it later. Then we have
ये वाला मॉडिफायर्स है।
options to add particle over here, particle properties, and force fields. Then list of constraints
राइट,
and object data, materials, and texture properties.
ये
At
सारी
the
चीज़ें
bottom
हैं
we
इसमें।
have animation timeline, playback controls.
ये
These
वाला एनिमेशन,
views you see,
ओके।
these are called editors in Blender. If you hover your mouse over here,
हाँ, ये
you can
सारे
see this is
एडिटर्स है
called
इसके अंदर।
3D viewport. This
राइट,
editor
ये
is
3D
called
विपोर्ट है, इमेज
outliner,
एडिटर
and
है,
this editor is
ये भी
called
एडिटर है,
properties. Now you
आउटलाइनर
can
है।
customize the layout according to your need. If I
हाँ,
bring this over here, and I can
राइट,
make this editor into outliner and this editor into 3D viewport.
राइट,
You can
सही है, हो रहा है।
also make more windows if you
डिफ़ॉल्ट
like.
करता हूँ इसको।
Okay,
ये
I'm just
डिफ़ॉल्ट
going
वाला
to
सही रहता है।
reset this to default
डिफ़ॉल्ट वाला सही है।
outliner and 3D viewport. If I want to add more views or more windows to the view, I'll simply bring my mouse over the top right or any
ऊपर
corner of the
कॉर्नर पे,
editor, and then when the cursor changes, click
ओके।
and drag, and this will split the window.
ओहो,
And if you want to
समझ
create
गया।
more views,
ये समझ में नहीं आ रहा था मुझे।
you can just click and drag for the corner of the window, and
कूल
you can
कूल
change
कूल।
these into any other type of editors as per your preferences, or
आउटलाइन
you
भी कर
can
सकते हैं इसको,
also
राइट।
change it into other views. Okay,
वो भी
like
हो, वो हो, वो भी कर
top
सकते
view,
हैं। ठीक
perspective
है,
view,
ग्राफ
right
एडिटर
view.
कोई अगर कोई
so
टेक्स्ट
that
एडिट
when you're
करना है,
working you can
अच्छा
have a
स्क्रिप्ट
look
वगैरह
from
डाल
different
सकते हैं इसमें,
angles.
ठीक है।
All right,
3D viewport,
and if you want to
लेकिन
join them back, simply bring your mouse on the partition line and right click join areas and hover your
राइट
mouse in the
क्लिक,
direction you want to
ओके,
join areas, or you can join them by simply click and drag from the corner, just like how you split the windows, and this will join it
कैसे क्लिक
and
हुआ,
it
नहीं
will
हो रहा
join in the
है, नहीं हो
direction
रहा
your
है,
mouse is. There are several presets available on the top shelf for
हाँ हो रहा है,
different kind of
टिक एंड क्लिक, ओके।
workspaces, and we will understand and use them
ये वाले
when
बॉक्स पीसेस है
we
पूरे,
move further in the
ठीक है,
tutorial, because right now it will be too much to discuss
सही बात है,
because you don't understand the context of it at this moment. Okay,
राइट।
so this is just to give you a quick overview of what is happening on the screen right now. So before we get into any details, I just want to make very small changes in preferences.
प्रेफरेंसेस
Go to edit
कहाँ पे जाना
preferences
यार, एडिट,
and
ओके एडिट,
in the key map select
की मैप यहाँ पे
with
है,
right click and space bar for
सेलेक्ट
search
स्पेस पर
and
सर,
save
हाँ राइट,
preferences.
वो भी राइट है, ये
Now
भी
in
सही है,
the
स्पेस पर
older
सही है।
versions of Blender, the right click used to be default selection and the
ये
left click
ब्लेंडर
was for the
3.5
3D
वाला है,
cursor.
यूज़ कर रहा हूँ मैं,
And there are very good uses of 3D cursor,
लगता है
and
थोड़ा
I would
चेंजेस है
prefer
उस
you
वाले
use
ब्लेंडर
the
में, इस
right
वाले
click
ब्लेंडर में।
selection. It's a very powerful way of working in the Blender. Also, for those who are coming from different softwares, it could be a bit difficult to get used to the right click selection. That is
मैं
why
थोड़ा
this option is there.
फ्यूजन
For
360 यूज़ करता हूँ,
for the rest of the
तो
tutorial,
थोड़ा
whenever we are selecting with, if
थोड़ा
you are
फेमिलियर हूँ
using the
3D
default settings, then you
वर्ल्ड
will
से,
be selecting with the left
समझ
click,
सकता हूँ कि
and the
कैसे
right
वर्क
click
होता
will be for the special context menu, which is on W if you are using right click.
है।
Okay, but we'll talk about this again, so don't worry about it. And space bar for search. So all the commands, more or less everything is available in the search menu. So very often we might forget
मतलब इस पर
where are the
क्लिक
commands
करके
located, in which
देखते हैं,
menu we need to go.
स्पेस
So it's
बार,
very convenient
मेक
to
इट
just
स्मूथ,
hit space bar and find the command which you're looking for. So without any further ado, let's select our
स्मूथ
cube with
नहीं
the right click. If you have left click selection, then you
है,
can
यस
select
शेड
it with the
स्मूथ,
left click.
राइट
Now you'll
मैन,
see
ये देखा था कहीं मैंने,
when I select the
यार
cube, it's
इसको,
also highlighted on the outliner.
राइट राइट
Now to move this object, I'm going to press G. Okay, I'll press G and G for
ओके
grab. I'm going to grab this object and move it with the
ओके,
mouse.
हाँ
Okay,
हाँ,
I can right click
बस
and
जी को
cancel the command if I
प्रेस
want.
करना
I
है
can press
और
G and drag
कुछ
it
माउस पे
and
कुछ दबाना नहीं
right
है,
click
बस
to
आपको
confirm the
हिलाना है
location.
बस,
Now
ठीक है,
similarly, if I want to
जहाँ पर
scale
आपको
the
प्लेस करना
object,
है वहाँ पर
I
जाके
can
आप
press
इसको
S to scale it,
ये कर सकते हैं,
R
अब
to
यस,
rotate it. So now when
यस
you'll see
स्केल कर सकते
our
हो यस से।
viewport is in the
ये
in the
शॉर्टकट्स
three
की बहुत
dimension.
ज़रूरत, मतलब
We
इट्स
have
वेरी
red line
इंपॉर्टेंट,
for the
आप इसको
x-axis,
समझना
we
बहुत
have
ज़रूरी लगता है
green
मुझे,
line for the y-axis,
राइट राइट
and the
राइट,
vertical one is
छोड़
the
दिया,
z one. But when we are
और
moving, it's
आर के
not
लिए
moving in
आर
3D
दबाऊंगा
dimension. Okay, it's
तो मुझे
like
ये रोटेट
just
करेगा, जहाँ पर वहीं से रोटेट
moving
करेगा,
on the according to the
माउस
scale.
पे आपको कुछ भी क्लिक
To
नहीं
move
करना
it
है,
in one
ठीक है
particular x,
ठीक है,
you will have to use assign the axis with the help of
ओके,
shortcut key. Press G to move it,
जी
and then if you hit X on the keyboard, it
एक्स,
will only move the object into
राइट,
X
हाँ हाँ
axis.
हाँ,
If
एक्स
you
दबा
press
दिया,
G and Y, then it will only move the object into Y axis.
जी
If
एंड
you press
वाई,
G and Z,
ऐसे जा
then
रहा है
it
जी,
will move the object in the Z axis.
बाद
Alright.
में आप जी
Similarly for
दबा के, अब
rotation,
जी
if I
दबाया
press
तो
R
ऊपर नीचे
and
होगा,
X,
ओके ओके
it will
ओके,
work in the X direction. R Y for
अच्छा,
the Y
जी मार
direction.
के आर एंड
R
एक्स,
Z for the Z
आप समझ
rotation.
सकते हो ये क्या कर रहा है,
Similarly for
ओ
scaling
कूल, समझ रहा हूँ,
SX, for scaling in the X direction, SY
राइट,
for Y direction, SZ. Alright.
वेरी कूल,
Now if you go to the object properties over here, you will
ऑब्जेक्ट
see
प्रॉपर्टीज,
as we move, rotate or scale the object, these parameters change here, or you can also check these from the viewports
कहाँ पे, यहाँ पे,
panel on the
अच्छा,
right. This panel
हाँ ये
shortcut
सेंटर
is
पे था पहले,
10
तो अभी
if you want
इसका
to.
लोकेशन चेंज
Now
हुआ
when
है
we move
और
the
रोटेशन
object
चेंज हुआ है,
around or
राइट,
the scale it, these parameters change. Now you can reset these this
कैसे
to default cube. If you
कैसे,
press Alt G, it will reset the
ऑल्ट
transformation.
ऑल्ट
Alt
जी,
S will reset the scale.
ऑल्ट,
If it has
ओके,
any rotation, Alt R will reset the
ओ
rotation.
हो,
But if you want
ओके,
to apply all the transformation to object so that in future if you reset anything it should stay as it is, then you'll have to press Ctrl A on the keyboard and apply all transform. Now you'll see all
कंट्रोल
the basic
ए,
default
ऑल
values are
ट्रांसफॉर्म,
set to 0. Scale is 1
हाँ
because
ज़ीरो हो
scale
गया,
can't be 0. So now if I press Alt G, Alt S, nothing is happening because this is the default these are the default
एक मिनट
coordinates
है,
now.
जी दिया
Now you can see the right now
हाँ,
coordinates are showing in meters, because in the scene
और
properties panel
जी
unit setup
से
you
आ
can
गया,
see
ओके।
it's assigned meter over here.
ऐसे
You can
फेमिलियर होना
change
बहुत
this
ज़रूरी
to
होता है
centimeters if
एप्लीकेशन
you
से,
like,
तभी जाके हम लोग
in the metric
इसको
system.
हम
Now
इसमें
you
ब्लेंड हो
can
सकते
see
हैं
the
सही से।
dimensions are showing in the centimeters. All right. So I'm going to delete this one now. We are going to
डिलीट
bring
करना
few more objects in the scene.
है,
So
ओके
I'll press Shift A to bring up the add
राइट, हाँ
menu, which
शिफ्ट
is
ए
also available over
मेनू,
here. Shift A,
शिफ्ट ए,
and
हाँ
you can see there is a list of whole lot of things going on here.
राइट,
There are mesh
बहुत सारी
objects,
चीज़ें
curve
हैं,
objects, and lights, camera, almost everything, all kind of
राइट
objects in the Blender are
राइट,
available here. From the mesh menu, I'm going to select a cube. Okay, the cube
ओके।
appears here. Now I
क्यूब
also
कहाँ
want
गया यार, क्यों, अच्छा ये
one
कर्सर कहाँ पे वहाँ पे
cylinder
चला गया,
here.
तो
I'll press
इसको
Shift A to bring one
वेट अ
cone.
मिनट,
Okay,
वेट अ मिनट, मैंने
now
गलती
I'll
किया, जस्ट अ मिनट, भाग जाएगा वरना। तो मैंने कर्सर को ऊपर चला गया है, इसको मैं क्या करता हूँ, ठीक है, कर्सर जहाँ पे कर्सर होगा वहीं पे ऑब्जेक्ट प्लेस होगा, तो शिफ्ट ए और प्लेन क्यूब, ठीक है आ गया। और इसने और एक अपना ये लिया, क्या लिया इसने, शिफ्ट ए, मैश बॉडी और कौन लिया, ठीक है, ओके ठीक है, तो स्टार्ट करते हैं।
select these and
और
place
एक
them where I
इसने ऐड
want.
किया,
Now, every time I create an object, it appears in the
शिफ्ट ए,
center on top of
शिफ्ट
each other. I want them to appear
शिफ्ट
where I
ए,
want to create them.
और इसने
To
क्या
do
लिया,
that,
सिलेंडर लिया, ठीक है,
we are going to use 3D cursor.
जहाँ पर कर्सर रहेगा
Actually,
वहीं पे
when you
आएगा।
create a new object, it appears where the 3D cursor is. So if I click here, and now if I add one torus,
ऐसा ही हो रहा है,
it will appear where the location of the 3D cursor
ठीक
was.
है
If I
ठीक है ठीक
click
है, समझ,
here, cone, then you can see this is much easier way. If you're working in a bigger layouts and scenes, uh, every
समझ
time
रहा
you don't have to drag
हूँ,
a new
राइट मैम,
object which is created in the center of the on the grid. Okay,
हम्म
and
हम्म
also this 3D cursor is not just like a computer cursor. It has a depth. This takes the viewport depth into consideration, or
ओके
the
हाँ,
surface which you click on. Let's say if I click here, you can see
हम्म,
the 3D cursor is on this particular face of the object. If I
नहीं
click
यहाँ पे कैसे
here,
दिखाएंगे,
then you see the 3D cursor is snapped on top of this cone. So now if I add one UV sphere and scale it down, you can see the movement is pretty much precise. If I
ये यूवी
if I
स्फीयर
want
है,
to add another cube here,
यस इसको स्केल करना है,
I can
क्या मारना,
easily
यस मारना है
create
ना मुझे,
objects where I want.
राइट राइट राइट,
Now 3D
ओ
cursor have many other
समझ गया,
uses which we will discuss
पूरा
later. So now that we have a few objects in the scene, I want to
समझ
have
रहा
a
हूँ,
look around them in 3D from different angles. So to do that,
ये
I'm
क्या
going
किया
to
है इसने,
press middle mouse and
मिडिल
rotate the
माउस,
view.
हाँ
Okay,
ओके
I can rotate the view up and down, left to right. If
ओके,
I want to zoom in and out, press Control and middle click zoom in and zoom out.
कंट्रोल एन,
For
नहीं क्या नहीं आ
with
रहा
the
है,
shift middle click, you can drag it on the
वेट
left,
वेट
right,
वेट
top,
वेट वेट,
bottom.
कुछ बोला यार इसने,
That I'm going to press middle mouse and rotate the view.
ओके
Okay,
हाँ,
I can rotate the view up and down, left to right. If I want to zoom in and out, press Control and middle click zoom in and zoom out.
मिडिल कलर का नहीं,
For
ओके ओके,
with the
मैं समझा
shift
एन
middle
दबा रहा था,
click,
ठीक है
you
ठीक
can
है,
drag it on the left, right,
शिफ्ट
top,
लेके
bottom.
आजू बाजू करना
Now
है, ठीक है,
also you can change this viewport to different other views, like if we create one window here, I'm going
वन
to
विंडो
close
ये,
this panel with the N. Okay, front, I want to see it from the front view in this panel.
हम्म,
Then I can press 1 on the keyboard to bring up the front view, and if I
वन,
press
फ्रंट
3,
व्यू आ गया,
then it will bring up the right view.
थ्री राइट व्यू, ओके
Now if you press okay, 1 for the front view, 3 for the right view, and 7 is for the top view. Now
ओके,
you might be
ये वाले
wondering
नम
what
पैड में
these
जाना है, हाँ
numbers are, and these might won't make any sense right now, but if you have a look at this indicator and go to the front view,
really
you can
good,
see
really
the
good
Z
man,
is upwards, X is on the right, and the Y is in the front. Now if you if you imagine the layout of the number pad keyboard and you compare it with this, Now one is the default one, the front viewport. Now
हाँ
if you want to
ये
move
Z वाला
upwards, the uppermost
राइट
key is
1 पे
the
आएगा
7 and the
राइट
rightmost key is the 3. Okay, so
कूल मैन
this is
यस
this way it's easier to remember, like 1 for the front, 7 for the top, 3 for
राइट
the right view. If you press control 1, it will be left click, left view. If you press control 7 for the bottom view, control 3 for the left view. Okay, if you
राइट
want to bring back the perspective, simply press 5 on the numpad
प्लस 5 यस
and it will become a perspective view. All right,
ओके
now if you select any object and press dot on the number pad,
डॉट
it will zoom onto that
अच्छा
particular
अच्छा यहाँ पे
object,
है
so you can
इसे
focus on
क्लिक
it.
करना
And also if you want to
है
isolate
ओके
this one and just focus on this one, hit the
ओके
forward slash. Forward slash is for the
फॉरवर्ड
local view
स्लैश
or like
ओके
isolation.
फॉरवर्ड स्लैश
Once
ओके
you are done editing the object, you can
बैक
always
कैसे आना है
hit
इसको
the forward slash again to exit the local view. If
ओके
you get confused about the axis at any moment, you can use this
शॉर्टकट्स बहुत
indicator
हैं भाई
and you can
बहुत
also
प्रैक्टिस
hover
करना पड़ेगा
over
इसके लिए
your mouse to look at the
अभी
shortcuts.
मुझे
Right now it's
शिफ्ट ए
showing
कुछ भी
shortcut
ऐड
for
करने के
the
लिए
1,
शिफ्ट
number
ए
pad
पकड़ना है ऐड
3
के लिए
and number pad 7. Okay, so
और
I'll quickly reset my
थोड़ा
scene from the file
रिवर्स
menu.
आता हूँ थोड़ा रिकैप करता हूँ इसको और क्या करना है मुझे भी स्केल करने के लिए ग्रैब करने के लिए मूव करने के लिए जस्ट जी दबाना है ठीक है तो ये माउस को बस हिलाना है बस ठीक है छोड़ दिया और इसको स्केल करना है तो यस दबाया और थोड़ा सा स्केल किया ठीक है बस यस दबाना है कुछ शिफ्ट वगैरह प्लस कंट्रोल कुछ दबाना नहीं है ठीक है और मूव करना और एक्सेस में आगे पीछे करने के लिए ग्रैब करना है पहले ग्रैब और अगर मुझे एक्स एक्सेस को लेना है तो एक्स दबाना है राइट 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 सही है समझ गया ठीक है
New, click on general, don't save. One more thing, when you create new objects, let's say if I create a cone over here, now before I drop the object or like
इसको
use
निकालता
any
हूँ
other
ठीक है
command,
ठीक
you can see this
ऐड करते हैं
option is
शिफ्ट ए
available,
ऐड
which is
मैश
which can be
कौन
expanded,
लिया बंदे ने
and this gives you
तो यहाँ पे
option
कुछ
to tweak this newly created object. This option is only available immediately after you have made one object and you haven't dropped the selection. Once you drop the selection, that option is
ओके
gone and you cannot change it. So let's say if you create a torus, you can zoom in and zoom out, that
इसको
is
निकालते
okay.
हैं
So
तो
now
टॉरस निकाल
I just
टॉरस लेते
want
हैं ठीक है
to set up the
शिफ्ट ए
segments, like how many
टॉरस
points
कम
I
बाय
want
टॉरस आ गया
in the
ठीक है
surface.
तो इसमें इसने क्या किया
If I want very low resolution, high resolution, or I want it to look like
थोड़ा सा
four-sided torus.
ओके
Transformation, you can always do that later, but to set up the segments and all, this is very useful. And you can also control parameters like radius and stuff. Now if you create torus again, then it will appear just like the previous one, because it's taking all those
पता नहीं टाइम ले
settings
रहा है
which
शायद
you
मेरे
just
पास
did
राइट हाँ
into consideration. If you want to reset it, just click on the restore defaults, then the torus will appear just like how
कहाँ
it
पे
was by default.
रिसेट डिफॉल्ट
Now
ओके
that we have a few
राइट
objects in the scene, I'm going to quickly just grab few objects and place them in the scene.
क्या क्या ऐड करना है मुझे
Before
एक
we
मिनट है
proceed further, I just want to let you know that you would want to memorize all the short
शिफ्ट ए
commands we are
बहुत
using,
ज़रूरी है बहुत ज़रूरी है
and at least the essential
मंकी
ones
लिया
like transformation and creating objects and a few other
और
shortcuts which we will use in editing mode,
शिफ्ट ए
because Blender is very powerful when you work with
क्यूब लिया
just the shortcuts. It's a very
ठीक
fast
है
and efficient way, and the short commands are
ये
designed in a way that it's very easy to
और क्या लिया
memorize.
बंदे ने यूवी
Now
स्पेयर
that we
राइट
have multiple objects in the scene, you
ऐसे
can
स्पेयर ओके
select the multiple objects by holding down the shift key. If I select this one and hold down the shift key, I can select the multiple objects.
ओके
And
शिफ्ट से
if you want to
मल्टीपल
deselect any
ऑब्जेक्ट
object,
आपको सेलेक्ट
you
करना है
can
तो
just
ठीक है
hold the shift key and
ओके
click on the object until it's no longer active.
मतलब
Okay,
शिफ्ट
when
दबा
it
के
turns
उस
gray,
पर क्लिक करना
it's
है तो
deselected.
डिसेलेक्ट होगा
Now you
ओके
might be thinking, what is active object? There are many uses of active object. It's a way of communicating within the blender that this one is the highlighted object is the active one. So when you shift select or the most recent selection is the active object. If I deselect anything,
देख
so if
सकते
I
हो
only
आउटलाइनर पे
have
जो
one
भी
object
चीज़ें
in
यहाँ पे
this,
है प्लेस है
then
यहाँ पर
that one object
लिस्ट
is
होती
active
हैं
object.
होती रहती
If
हैं
I have multiple objects
सी
selected,
ऐसे
then
फिर
the
आ गया सब
recent
कुछ आ गया
selection is the active
कूल
object,
समझ रहा
the
हूँ
one with the yellow border. Now let's say if I want to transfer colors from this object to these objects or the materials or any other information, so I can use commands like transfer from the active object to the other selection. And also when you are parenting, you would need to use active object. You can also use this for transformation. I just want to let you know what the
ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन समझ
active
में नहीं
object
आया
is at this stage.
तो थोड़ा
We
देखना
won't be
पड़ेगा
using it for now, but I will explain later when we get into more complicated commands. Okay, you can also select multiple objects with the help of box selection. Press B
बॉक्स
on the keyboard and
बी
simply click and drag,
ओके
and it will select all the objects within the
ओके
box selection.
ओके
And if you want to deselect with the box selection, press B and middle mouse drag, it will deselect. Okay, if I
ओके
just want to deselect these two, middle mouse drag and selection with the left mouse. There are also other options available like lasso and circle selection, but most of the time you will be using the B command. You can also
नहीं हो रहा
hit
है
A key on the keyboard to select everything.
अच्छा
If you press
डीसेलेक्ट के लिए
press
मिडिल
it
माउस
twice,
माउस का जो
it will
स्क्रोलर
deselect
है उसको
everything.
दबाना पड़ेगा
Alright, I'm going to
ठीक है
select everything and just delete it. Let's say you have moved your
सेलेक्ट
3D
ऑल
cursor somewhere
सेलेक्ट
and
ऑल
you want to
कंट्रोल ए
reset
नहीं
it on the default location,
बस
which is
ए
on the
दबाना है
center.
हाँ ए दबा के
Press Shift S,
चला गया
and
क्या बोला भाई
Shift
ने
S is for the cursor menu, and
शिफ्ट
then you
एस
can Shift S
दबा के पकड़ना है आपको शिफ्ट एस को
cursor to world origin. Okay,
कर्सर टू
so
वर्ल्ड
I'll just
ओरिजिन
bring one monkey head
हाँ
over
ये वर्ल्ड
here
ओरिजिन
in the
सेंटर में आ
center.
जाएगा ओके
Now I
मंकी हेड
can
लेना शिफ्ट ए लगाया
duplicate stuff with
मैं
the
आ गया
Shift
मंकी हेड ले
D.
लिया
If you press
ठीक है
sorry, I'll just enable my screencast over here.
क्या करना है
So
इसमें
if I
शिफ्ट
press
डी
Shift D, Shift D to duplicate stuff, and then you can move them wherever you want. Now what I'll do is right now these are all facing in same direction. I'll just
और
make
शिफ्ट डी
some
दबाऊंगा
random
और एक लूँगा
rotations.
ठीक है
Alright, bring one over here
इनको रोटेट करना है
and
कैसे
make
रोटेट
this
करना
one
है
face
इसको
in this
रोटेट करेंगे
direction.
ठीक है
Alright.
ओके
I just wanted to
अब
clarify
इसको
a
रोटेट
few of the
करना है
options which are available over here, and these are
ओके
very important if you want to manipulate
इसको
stuff
रोटेट करना है
more efficiently.
अरे रे 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 रे
So I have these four monkey heads facing in
अरे
different
यार
directions. Okay,
हाँ ओके
and right
हाँ
now
मैंने तीन
these
लिया है
are in global coordinate. So what are the
ओके
global coordinates?
कर्सर लेना है
This
क्या
is minus x, this is plus x, this is minus y, this is
चलो और एक
plus
ले
y,
लेते हैं
this is minus z, this is plus z. Okay, these are global
ओके
coordinates. I can change this to local axis. Now what this means is if you select anything,
ओके
let's select this object, or I'll select this one. If I change this rotation
रोटेशन
here, now you'll see the z direction is tilted upwards. Okay, now this is not
कहाँ
parallel
है
to the world z
कैसे पता
direction.
चलेगा डी
If you change
टिल्ट हुआ
this
नहीं
to
है वहाँ
global, right now you see the rotation in the z, the gizmo is
एक
showing
मिनट हाँ
parallel line with the grid. That is because
कहाँ पे
we are using the global coordinates. If I change this to local, this will switch to this direction because we made some rotation in this model. So if I try to move everything in
अच्छा
global,
ये
what
वाला
happens
ग्लोबली
is
रहेगा
they all move global coordinates. So they all will be moving in same direction. Now if I want to move them in their own local coordinates, I'll change this to local. Now see what happens if I move them into z direction. Now they are all moving in their own z direction. They are all moving in their own y direction
सही है
and
सही है
x direction. And this is what global and local means. So these are very important
रियली
if you
कूल
are animating stuff, and also if you want to
बहुत कुछ समझा इसमें
efficiently place models more
लेकिन इसको
more
प्रैक्टिस करना बहुत
effectively.
ज़रूरी है
So I'll encourage you to try these out as well.
क्या है इसमें?
And also there are a few options
नॉर्मल,
for
गिम्बल.
transform
गिम्बल क्या
pivot
होता
point.
है?
Now what transform pivot
वीव,
point means,
कर्सर,
if you select everything
नॉर्मल,
and try to rotate it, sorry, I'll go back to global.
ग्लोबल.
Now
ओके.
if you select everything and try to rotate it, now what happens is when you make any transformation, it takes the center of the selection as the average point and makes the transformation from the center, okay, especially the rotation or the scale. Now that is because right now the transform pivot point is set to bounding box center. So the
ये
bounding
क्या होता
box
है?
which is
बॉन्डिंग बॉक्स क्या
around
होता
all
है?
these four objects, that is what considered as the transform pivot point, the center of that bounding box. Now if I
ओके,
change
ये
this
इन
to
चारों
3D
का सेंटर
cursor, see
पॉइंट
what
बनता है
happens.
उसमें. ओके.
If I place my 3D cursor over here and try to rotate this, these objects will rotate from 3D cursor point.
3D कर्सर जहाँ पे है.
Okay.
ओ
Now,
कूल मैन.
right now this might sound very simple,
ओके
but it's
ओके ओके ओके.
very
तो
effective
यहाँ पे
when
चेंज
you
करना होता है मुझे.
combine this with soft selection, especially in object editing mode.
ये
We'll talk
बहुत
about
कमाल की
this
चीज़ है यार,
further in
ये
next
वाली
chapter,
चीज़.
but this is just so that you understand this command. Now, if I change this one to individual origins, now see what
इंडिविजुअल.
happens if I change this to local
यहाँ पे हाँ,
and individual origins.
लोकल करना है इसको. ठीक है. ओके.
Like what we discussed, instead of all moving together or all
ये
rotating
अगर
from
मूव
center,
करना है तो
they
ठीक
all
है.
will rotate in their own local axis.
ओके. अगर मूव किया तो अपने लोकल एक्सिस पे
Now
मूव
this is
करेगा,
so much convenient
और
if you want to add
रोटेट
stuff.
किया तो ये अपने इंडिविजुअल.
Okay.
हाँ,
If I
अपने से.
change this to active
राइट
element,
राइट राइट.
then what happens is whatever is the active element, as we discussed, the highlighted object is the active element. You can change this by shift. Now the
क्या
center
करना है?
of the
शिफ्ट.
rotation will be the active element. So right now if I say, if I place one over here and select everything, okay, this one is the active element. Now the
एक्टिव एलिमेंट
rotation
का
will
है.
happen from this point.
राइट,
If
एक्टिव
I
एलिमेंट
make
है.
this one active element, then rotation will happen from this point.
नहीं हो रहा है. अच्छा, सेलेक्ट पूरा करना है. एक
Now
मिनट एक मिनट.
these are very useful commands when you're
एक
working
मिनट.
with
हाँ
complex
हाँ,
transformations,
राइट, समझ गया.
and you will get used to them when we move forward and create some basic setup
Very
and
cool,
use them in the right context. Now when you're working with the shortkeys,
हम वीडियो
to
काफ़ी
access
लंबा
the
जा रहा है.
local
मैं बस 30
transformation
मिनट
with the
तक
shortkeys, you
रखूँगा,
have to
उसके
use.
बाद नेक्स्ट
So
वीडियो
now
देखते
let's
हैं.
say your view
हाँ.
is the transformation orientation is set to the global, and you want to move this object in with the short key, okay, then you'll have to press G, Y and Y again. Then it will change to the local axis. If I
ओके.
press G, Y, it's moving in the global. If I press G double Y, then it will snap to the local axis. G double Y, G double X. So you'll just have to hit the axis key twice to assign the transformation into the local
सारे जा रहे
orientation.
हैं तो अगर इसको
Just delete
लोकल
everything
किया तो
and
सेट करो.
bring few cubes over here. Now let's talk about what
ये
snapping.
वाला चीज़ देखते हैं. क्या किया इसने? डिलीट करना है पूरा. क्या करना है यार इसको? नहीं नहीं, कर्सर ये भी नहीं हो रहा है सारा. डबल ए करता हूँ. डबल ए डिलीट. ओके, करने की ज़रूरत नहीं. अब क्या मैं भाई ने क्या लिया? सेंटर रखते हैं कर्सर को, ऐड करते हैं क्यूब को. ठीक है, शिफ्ट ए, ऐड क्यूब, और डुप्लीकेट डी दबाया, इसको लिया. अरे कहाँ नहीं हो रहा है, कुछ वर्क नहीं हो रहा है. डी, शिफ्ट डी दबाना है क्या? ओके, हाँ, शिफ्ट डी दबाओ और ले लो. अरे शिफ्ट डी दबाओ. नहीं नहीं, अरे अरे, एक बात याद रखनी है, इसमें क्लिक नहीं करना है. जब भी आप दबाओ, अगर ये चार वाला प्रेस करो, चार वाला जो एरो आता है, तो बस आपको मूव करना है जहाँ मूव करना है. देखते हैं अभी. शिफ्ट डी, हाँ बस मूव करो बस. आप बाद में आपको जहाँ पे प्लेस करना है वहाँ पे जाके क्लिक करो. अरे नहीं हो रहा है. शिफ्ट डी, हाँ लेफ्ट क्लिक करना है, राइट क्लिक नहीं करना है. ठीक है, शिफ्ट डी, राइट क्लिक, शिफ्ट डी, राइट क्लिक. डन। और इसमें बाकी क्या बचा है? ओके,
means. So this option over here is called snapping. If you are familiar with any other graphical
स्नैपिंग।
software, I'm sure you might be familiar with what snapping means.
हाँ, 3D
So right now, if I
मतलब
try
फ्यूजन
to,
360 में अलग होता है,
let's say if I
ऐसा
want
नहीं
to
होता है?
move this point, this vertex over here, then
कौन
it
सा?
might take me several attempts to match it to that box, to that corner. And what I can do is I can use this option, the snapping. Now by default, this is
कैसे?
set to increment. What this does is, if you try to move your object, this will use the grid
वर्टेक्स,
and
ओके।
incrementally move your object. Okay, now if I change this one to vertex, see what happens if I try to move the object. It will snap to the closest vertex. So right now, if I want to move this point over here,
हाँ यार,
I'll grab this one
देखते हैं इसको।
and move this over here, and it will perfectly snap over here. Okay, now if you want to move this
हाँ,
point
मूव कर रहा है,
to
राइट
this
राइट
point,
राइट।
now what you'll have to do is you'll first have to bring this one close to this one, otherwise it won't pick it up. Then you can move it to this point. Now let's try a few more attempts. Now you can move this one
राइट राइट
close
राइट।
to this one, and if you want to snap this point over here, then first bring close to this one, and then you can snap it. And if you
अब
don't
पॉइंट
have the
हाईलाइट करने होगी,
snapping on,
पॉइंट।
you can simply, while moving, press Control, and this will snap your object.
पकड़ा
Simply
इसको,
press
यहाँ पे
Control,
लगा, एक मिनट एक
whatever is
मिनट।
the option available over here, it will
यस,
take
डूइंग गुड।
that and toggle the snapping. All right, so this is just for the movement, and there are other options. If you want to rotate, scale, and use the snapping, that also works.
क्या
Let's
चीज़ है ये?
say right now this object, I want to scale this to this height, then I can enable scale as well.
स्केल, ओके। और
And now if I try to scale this one and press Control, then when it reaches this point's height, it will stop. It will snap to this height. So you can use this in scaling as well.
ओ हो।
Sorry,
ये
scale
एक्सट्रूजन में होता
Z
है,
direction,
फ्यूजन 360 में,
SZ,
दैट इज़
and
डिफरेंट।
press
वो अलग चीज़
Control
है,
to that point,
ये
and
अलग
it will
चीज़ है।
snap.
ओके ओके ओके।
You can also rotate and use snapping.
हम्म,
If I rotate this one and use Control, it will snap to this point or snap to
समझ गया।
the point you want to
वेरी
just
इंपॉर्टेंट टूल है ये, इसको
move your mouse in that particular direction.
सीखना, बहुत प्रैक्टिस
That
करना
point,
बहुत
and
ज़रूरी
it
है।
will snap to that point. Okay.
ठीक है,
So, all right, I'll just reset
थोड़ा
this one. There
उतना
are a few more
कन्वीनियंट नहीं हो
options
रहा है
over
मुझे,
here.
लेकिन
Now
जस्ट
to clarify
इसको
things,
एक्सप्लोर करना
what I'll do
पड़ेगा।
is simply bring one
लेकिन समझ,
PV
बेसिक
sphere
आइडिया
over
ये
here
मिल गया कि
and make this
ये वर्क क्या करता है, और ये
shape
ग्लोबल क्या है,
smooth.
लोकल क्या है,
Now let's
ये
pick
बेसिक
one
आइडिया मिल गया इससे।
simple
ये क्या
torus
चीज़ है?
object.
पिवेट पॉइंट, हाँ, ये जो
Now
एलिमेंट्स
if
को
I make this one to
बॉन्डिंग बॉस
align
कहाँ पर
rotation to target, if I click this
पॉइंट्स जो है,
option,
वो वाला ऑप्शन, ये
yeah,
फीचर है
just go to the face mode and project individual elements.
इसमें। इसने क्या किया?
Now see, if you want to quickly duplicate stuff, these will automatically pick up the orientation of the surface you are projecting on, and this is so much convenient. All right,
आज के लिए बस इतना ही भाई, कल के
so you
कल
don't
का
have
देखते
to
हैं।
all the time just I mean create a
तब तक के लिए टाटा, बाय बाय। प्लीज़ सब्सक्राइब एंड शेयर, हिट द लाइक बटन। और कुछ बोलना है? बस।